This podcast may contain some explicit magical content. Hello, I'm your host, Britt Vasacek. Welcome to Dear Divine Diary, an audio diary entry in which I talk about my magical practice. I am really inspired to start this project right now. I think that's kind of what is at the top of my mind. I have been thinking about doing something kind of solo in a more podcasty format for a while. And it's just been a lot of me kind of holding on to that desire and letting go of what it might look like. And now I'm just kind of experimenting with this. So I am going to talk a little bit about sex magic. It is something that a lot of people ask me about and want a lot of details about. I don't know exactly how much of my personal practice will be interesting. And I will say again that I'm going to go into detail, and if that sounds inappropriate to you or like something that you wouldn't want to listen to me talk about, just be sure that you're delighted to listen to sexual magical details before you proceed. I'm going to be talking today about one of the most commonly discussed, or I'll say like the thing that I see most commonly asked and published around, which is the power of manifesting with the orgasm. To me, manifesting with the orgasm is kind of sex magic 101. It's really understanding the orgasm and the way that it relates to your manifestation practice, and the way that you can use your orgasm in your magical practice. I think starting from that point, you can really start developing a magical practice that works for you when it comes to sex magic, because that's the basics, right? I do think that there is so much room in the conversation for things like pleasure and attraction energy. I think that there's so much room in your own practice for having a relationship with nature and a relationship with your body that far expands beyond just the orgasm. So I will say, like kind of like when you practice yoga, but you're only doing the asana, like if you're practicing sex magic, but you're only doing the orgasm part, you're really missing out on such a rich body of magical and ecstatic and pleasurable experiences. So that's my first little disclaimer. My second little disclaimer is that I recommend when you start doing sex magic to also start practicing celibacy. And when you start working with orgasm manifestation, you start with having solo orgasms with yourself. I can definitely expand upon the concept of sacred celibacy, which is something that is very close to my heart, especially in the context of sex magic, but there's also a secular way to do it that's really positive. And I also would love to talk about the difference between solo sex magic and partnered sex magic. But I will kind of boil down the orgasm part just for like instructional purposes, so that we don't get too far off in the weeds, because I could, talk about this all day and I don't want to get lost on my path. So there are many different ways to conceptualize what exactly is happening when your orgasm takes place. That climactic event, in combination with your manifestation, can take many different forms. And I think that it's useful because I acknowledge that everyone has a different practice and has a different philosophy, a different religious background. There are people that have an affinity for different practices than mine. And I acknowledge that there are witches that are doing magic that are different religions. There are witches doing magic that are, atheist or agnostic, that don't even claim a god. And I really respect and honor that path. I think that in order to kind of resurrect and resuscitate the magic that exists here on earth, it's really important to practice tolerance of all practices. And it's also really important to, as myself a magical teacher, and I would recommend anyone else that wants to teach magic, to try to maximize the accessibility of the work that you're teaching. And that's something that I really strive for. So I'm offering a few different conceptualizations of the orgasm climax manifestation process. And I also really want to honor that, once you kind of learn about, as soon as you hear the phrase like manifesting with an orgasm, you yourself may have a conceptualization or some kind of process or outline of how that would look for you. And I really encourage people to, if they feel inspired in that way, if they hear kind of a magical phrase and they think, wow, I know exactly how my body would want to do that, like particularly with sex magic, then follow that thread, because you are the most powerful magician that you will ever do magic for, right? Every single person has their own magical mechanics in their body, in their soul, in their brain, in their life path. And so if you feel really inspired and creative around it, I really don't want the description of, the different ways that I think you can manifest with an orgasm to limit how you believe you can manifest with an orgasm. And I'll say that with one caveat, because when we're talking about manifestation, we can kind of get lost in the sauce around what it actually means to manifest. So I'm going to briefly talk about what it means to manifest something, and then I'll move into how you would apply that to your orgasm. I really love saying orgasm this many times in like an 8-minute span. You have no idea how much joy it brings me. I'm also going to take a sip of tea before I go into my manifestation rant. Chamomile and hibiscus flower. That is the vibe tonight. Raw chamomile and raw squishy hibiscus flower. So good. Very cute, very pink. Kind of the rose gold color. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to be here forever. So what does it mean to manifest something in the first place? This is a common question. You'd be surprised. Because what I'm finding in my research, and by research, I mean when I like disassociate and scroll on Instagram and TikTok, is that a lot of people are claiming to be manifestation coaches, manifestation teachers, manifestation gurus, things that are not necessarily a thing that I believe in, really. I do think that it's very valuable to have coaches and teachers in your walk with your practice, but I don't really know, this kind of goes in the same vein of what I was saying earlier about following your creative magic and your creative thread. I'm not certain that anyone else could really define what manifestation is for you. Although I do believe that it is possible to be supported in your definition of manifestation. I would just be careful when we listen to other people talk about how they manifested something or what they think manifestation is, because we all have different levels of privilege and accessibility. We all have different desires and capabilities. We all have different gifts that we were born with and different life paths that we chosen. And that is if you believe in any of those things. I know that some of that's kind of woo-woo and some of that is kind of economical and societal, and some people don't believe in either of those things. So it just depends on where you come from and what you're ready for. So let's go into what I believe manifestation is. I believe that manifestation is the practice of bringing into material reality the things that you see in your imagination and that you feel in your soul. And this definition to me really keeps me grounded in understanding that the things that I think and the things that I feel. here. One second. I'm gonna like do an equipment check.